Hello, lovely listener, and welcome to the Aardvark Swift podcast. I'm James Bowers, and I'm part of the marketing team here at Aardvark Swift. Throughout this series, we'll be chatting to game studios, initiatives, and industry professionals about all things video games, from tips on how to get into this line of work to studio cultures and projects to get involved in. This month, we speak to Brandon Cole and Millicent Thomas of Into Games, an initiative founded to widen the available pathways into the games industry, boosting diversity and inclusion. They discuss industry game jams, ambassador programs, and remote working. I'll start with you, Brandon. Your current role at Into Games, what is that, and what does a normal day look like for you?
In terms of a normal day, it changes quite a lot. We're quite, agile and quite reactive with the work that we do. So we can kind of jump on projects here and there. And so basically, my role is partnerships lead. So I work both with the games industry in the UK to kind of help them get involved with our initiatives. And then also I work with our kind of educational network as well. So really at the crux of what we do at Into Games is around kind of building those partnerships between the games industry and UK educators. So I kind of sit in the middle and try and connect educators and industry. And in terms of kind of day to day, it really depends. But a lot of my role is really working around the video game ambassadors, which is a kind of online platform that does exactly that, connecting kind of educators with industry. But then at the same time, lots of studios have different ideas about their approach that they want to take to kind of working with young people from underrepresented groups or disadvantaged backgrounds. And we can kind of be quite reactive and say, look, yeah, sure, we'll explore this with you. We'll explore that with you. We're a relatively new organization and it's quite exciting that we can kind of jump onto projects as they kind of come about. So in terms of a day to day, it normally involves, 9 or 10 hours a day sitting in front of my laptop for sure. But in terms of what I'm actually doing, it changes all the time.
Yeah, quite a sort of good facilitator. Someone says to you, these are the projects we want to sort of begin, make it happen.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's like a bit of an added, I think more from our side of like, here's a really cool project that you guys should be getting involved in. I think it's rarer that we have them come to us and say, we've got this awesome thing. It's normally us who come to them with the cool stuff.
Yeah, makes sense. And what about you, Millicent? What's your current role?
So I'm the social media and content lead, which means I'm the one doing all the tweeting. And I also write some articles for the site, and me and Brandon, we work on the podcast together that we're just getting started at the minute. So my average day is also very, very strange because I'm the only one on the team that's part-time as well. So I do roughly like 20 or so hours where these guys, they're there all week working really hard. We kind of start on Monday with like a group meeting, just chatting about the week ahead, what we kind of want to get out there, what we want to shout about. So I'll then like work on the Twitter and make some like cool little images and stuff just to make sure everyone knows about the great work we're doing, and maybe write some articles about it to send to kind of like our sponsors, our partners, just so they know what we're doing as well. It's really nice because I just get to like chat to a lot of people and hear about really amazing initiatives and projects, and then just make sure everyone else is hearing about them.
Yeah, the focal point for sort of communication going out is a large part of your week sometimes. If you've had a particularly busy week, coming back after sort of being part-time, coming back and going, right, what did I miss?
Yeah, it can be like that sometimes because obviously like Brandon and Declan are doing all these like massive overarching projects, and I'm like, okay, so what do you want me to tweet about? But it's a lot of fun for sure.
What's your timeline like for the podcast? Is that sort of near future, and when's that sort of due to start?
Well, the first episode is coming out this week, which is very exciting. And that's just myself and Brandon kind of introducing ourselves and telling everyone a bit about us and what we do. And then we've got an episode each month, and we're definitely trying to like bank a few and prepare, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. From experience, yes. It does help. So what does both of your career histories look like to get to the positions you're at now?
Do you want to take it first, Brandon?
Of course, yeah, I'll start. We kind of, I guess, always kind of talk about and tout that there's these like hugely diverse and crazy kind of paths into games. But I think, ultimately my path into games is quite a short one, actually, and just kind of a series of kind of fortunate circumstances. Just before I started at Into Games doing a course in social innovation down in London, I'd spent the last year before that on the dole, basically, just applying for jobs. I must have applied for 150, 200 jobs, just surviving on universal credit, basically. I was getting nothing, I just interested in kind of creative industries jobs and working with young people, and basically got kind of lucky and got onto this course down in London, went down to London with not a penny to my name. In fact, actually quite a lot of minus money to my name, and just kind of took a leap with it because it just seemed like such a great opportunity. And it was, I got the opportunity to work with young people out in North London, lots of young people kind of severely underrepresented in the creative sector. and basically kind of stumbled across into games because it's exactly what I was trying to find. I was trying to find some way that young people could get better industry engagement. It's really hard for schools and colleges to be able to kind of cut through a lot of the bureaucracy, I think, to get to the right person and say, like, look, we just need some people from your studio to come and talk to us. So I kind of stumbled across into games, and it was still very early stages at that point, and got in touch and ended up kind of building a partnership between both Into Games and the college. And I think Declan seen that I was really passionate about what I was doing and kind of brought me on to run some workshops. And yeah, I guess the rest is kind of history there. You know, when we went into lockdown, I had an idea in the shower about industry-sponsored game jam for young people in lockdown, told Declan about it. He liked it. Before I knew it, I was on the team running the thing. And now I've come on board as a kind of full-time permanent member of staff. So it all happened very, very quickly. And I feel very fortunate, actually, that I've had that afforded to me. So not a crazy and windy route into games that you often hear, but great for me, at least, anyway.
Yeah, it's really nice it worked out that way, because I can imagine moving to London in that sort of position, there was a lot of anxiety and uncertainty, I imagine.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I had no idea how it was going to go. I was so out of my depth, but honestly, one of the best years of my life for sure. Just taught me so much, and really like feel great that I can apply that to something that I really love now. You know, all of those learnings around supporting vulnerable groups that I can now kind of push into and put into games, and you know, I've got a drive behind that. Then you know, that's greater than the drive I have behind anything else. You know, it's sharing the kind of passion that I have for the industry with young people, which is great.
You're definitely one of the best places to do that. What about you, Millicent?
So how I got into this role was very much like right place, right time. I kind of maybe stumbled into it a bit. I've been a film journalist for nearly 2 years alongside uni, so I'm still at uni. I'm going into my final year in like 2 weeks. And just in lockdown, I started to like reevaluate a lot of things. You know, we all kind of had like a bit of an existential crisis, I'm sure. And I was like, what do I want to do with my life? And I've always been into games. I basically got an internship at Games Radar, but in the film department. But like being around the games people, I was kind of like inspired and thought, oh, maybe like, you know, maybe this is a possibility. I could be like in with that crowd. And I just like put out a little call on Twitter, and I was like, oh, do I have any friends who know of any kind of like internships or remote work experience available right now in the games industry? Maybe like marketing, PR, anything like that. And it was actually Brandon that DM'd me and was like, we don't have an internship, but we're looking for like someone to take a job if you want to do this. So I had like 2 interviews with Declan, and here I am, which is really, really weird because it happened so quickly. Yeah, it's a bit of a weird one, and I feel kind of super lucky and also kind of bad because it sounds really easy, but it's like just ask on Twitter if there's anything available and someone will give you a job. But that's not how it works, and I promise I put a lot of work into my interviews.
I was going to say, that's amazing. That almost never happens.
It's a 1 in a million, and I'm very, very thankful.
If you weren't currently working in the roles that you have, it wouldn't even need to be, I don't suppose, working in the industry. What role do you think you'd be doing?
Well, realistically, because I'm still at uni, I'd probably just be working in a pub. But like if I could have it my way and do like anything I want ever, I'd quite like to work at like PlayStation.
Okay.
And just be like head of like marketing or something. I might as well go big or go home, right?
Oh yeah, exactly.
So put me in like the biggest office and just like, yeah, I'll run the show.
Biggest office, most responsibility.
Yeah. But also most days off.
What about you, Brandon? What do you think you'd be doing?
You know, I think I'd be a gardener.
Oh,
Okay.
That's so sweet.
My pal John started a gardening business, and I've been helping him out every so often over the last few weeks. And you know what? It's a great job. It is the most satisfying thing in the world. And I think if I wasn't doing this, and I'm trying to think of something that's, you know, kind of far removed from what I'm doing, and that's about as far removed as you can get. And you know what? I think I'd live quite a happy and contented life as a gardener.
Oh, wait, I want to change mine because that was so wholesome. Okay, I don't want to be like a super big shot at PlayStation. I'm going to be like a yoga teacher or something in like the countryside.
It's too late now. You've already said big boss at PlayStation.
Oh no.
Shown your hand. Although, with the luck you've got with getting into games, just by saying that, you will get a call later.
Honestly, I'm just waiting by the phone now. Sorry, guys.
What would you say for both of you been the best project you've worked on so far as part of Into Games?
Oh, go on, Brandon. You'll have a good answer for this.
I really, really enjoyed Side Quest, I think, because it felt kind of a little bit like, I don't know, my first opportunity to really drive one of my own projects. So that was like our industry sponsored game jam that we ran. And that was a really, really exciting project. But you know what? I think actually the one that's the most exciting is some of the stuff that I did quite early on when I started working for Into Games. And we used to run these workshops called Access to Games. And basically it was as part of a kind of like alternative careers fair. I'm sure you remember if you kind of think back to school when you'd have a careers fair, and it's essentially like loads of recruiters with free goodie bags trying to get you signed up to courses that you don't want to do, rather than actually anything interesting or anything that's going to kind of give a young person a light bulb moment about what career they want to do. So it's kind of this alternative careers fair where they'd bring in basically local employers, local industry to run workshops with young people in careers that they might be interested in. So they'd get a little bit of a kind of greater understanding of what that sector was like or what that job was like. And basically we would run some of those around the games industry and basically get young people who kind of separated into groups and kind of emulating the development process. So they basically do everything in the whole kind of full game development pipeline, except actually do any kind of like coding or making of the game. So they'd kind of generate ideas, come up with a story, they'd create character art, concept art, they'd create a marketing campaign, you know, the front cover for the game, all of that stuff. And basically through the development pipeline, working alongside an industry mentor throughout the project as well. And then they would pitch their games at the end. And honestly, I guess kind of like seeing that on the really grassroots level and seeing like how much impact you can have just from spotlighting different careers. Kids who normally wouldn't listen in class, who wouldn't get involved in projects so much. And teachers were coming up and saying like, this is the most engaged that I've ever seen. And, you know, they went into it kind of thinking that the only jobs out there in the industry were programming roles. And then are coming out of it saying, I want to be in marketing for games. You know, I want to be a level designer. And that's a really, really cool feeling. And I think for me, that's the project that really excited me about Into Games.
Yeah, that's a really good answer. I can imagine, speaking from personal experience, I mean, I knew I wanted to work within games when I was at high school, but the actual knowledge of what was available, or not putting myself down thinking, well, that's more of a pipe dream. I'll just enjoy it as a hobby. I can't really make it into there. I think, yeah, showing kids at a younger level that you don't have to know code. There is a whole spectrum of different roles that you can go into. Yeah, it's really important because otherwise they just write it off.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. There's so much kind of like really sitting at what we're trying to do it Into Games as well. It's just like the power that you can have in like inspiring a generation by spotlighting all these kind of amazing careers and roles. And I'm sure we'll get into the meat of that in a little bit. And I don't want to kind of get ahead of myself. So I'll let Millicent tell you what her favourite project is work on.
Well, I've only been here like 5 weeks, so I haven't worked on anything quite as big as like workshops and game jams and that kind of thing. But a couple of weeks ago, I think it was like 3 weeks ago now, we started doing these kind of like live Twitter Q&As with industry professionals. So we've got an amazing database of interviews, and some of the people we've interviewed, we've been asking them to like just make themselves available online for like half an hour and just reply to some questions. If we like put out kind of a tweet saying, you know, like join us at this time and you can ask any of your like burning questions about like marketing, community management to game design to like this industry professional who's really amazing at what they do. I think it's been going really well and it's quite exciting to see people getting involved. So like the week before last, we had Anna Hollenrake from Mediatonic, which is obviously like doing really, really well at the minute with Fall Guys. So we had some really good questions, and she was just so fantastic. She like shared so much of her own experience and advice. She even shared like images of like her sketchbook and like sketched out a thing to kind of illustrate a point to a young person who was asking about like portfolios and things like that. And I was like, this is so valuable, just people getting to like ask their favorite like artist or designer exactly what they want to know, and to just feel like kind of imbue that confidence in their own career path. And I'm just really excited about where that's going to go. And the bigger we build our community on Twitter and online, the kind of better these sessions will go as well. And it's, yeah, I'm really proud of the work we're doing there.
It's really interesting. Anna's was actually the first one that I saw on social media. I was sat there like, this is a really good idea. Why has no one else done this? It's similar, but it's a bit of a vague question. What would you say would be either of your career highlights so far? Something that just makes you think, I can't believe I got to do that.
Well, at the moment, basically, it's like that every day. I feel like I just feel
That's quite nice.
very, very fortunate. You know, I feel really, really fortunate to be in the position that I'm in right now. And it really is a dream job. It's really, really exciting times. And I kind of have to pinch myself a little bit and remind myself, you know, I just get this really horrible like imposter syndrome that I'm like, I don't deserve to be here. You're no good at your job. Like, I just assume that because things are going well, that like some like falling satellite's going to come down from the sky at any moment and wipe me out, you know. I guess I can't really, maybe if you push me, I could pick something, but I'm going to leave it at that. I feel like at the moment, like my work at Into Games over the last few months has really been a highlight for me.
Yeah, I think getting the job was basically a career highlight because obviously this is very much the start of my career.
Yeah.
But I'm just so excited to be here. But I think one like specific thing that we're doing or have done that might be a highlight during my time here so far is I got to like co-host a panel at EGX, which is coming out next week. Like me and Brandon did a panel together with the lovely El Osley Wood. And like in my mind, when I thought I'm gonna try and get into the games industry, going to EGX was like, okay, that's on my bucket list. I've got to go to an EGX. So I never thought that like the first one I'd be a part of, I'd actually like be hosting a panel there.
No,
So
that is pretty good.
yeah, that was a really cool career highlight. And those panels are up next week, I believe, depending on when this podcast goes up. You might have already seen them.
That's really good. Probably one of the things on my bucket list, which I was potentially on the list to go to this year before obviously everything happened, was Gamescom.
No.
So moving on to more Intergame related questions. So what is the history behind Intergames? How was it founded? What's sort of your core sort of mission statement?
We're a fairly new organisation, so we haven't been around for that long, probably around 2 years now. And it was founded by Declan, who's the CEO, and Kirsty Rigdon, who's the development director over at Future Lab. And they were, frustrated about the same things that we're frustrated about, that there's a, complete lack of diversity in pathways into the games industry. We have an industry that's educated 90% to degree level, at least undergraduate level, and has a really, really high socioeconomic barrier as well, higher than architecture, which I actually found out recently, which is really surprising. So they were frustrated by that, and they were frustrated by the fact that young people more broadly weren't getting industry touch points, and they felt that that was kind of the reason why there were such limited pathways and there was such a lack of diversity in the games industry as well, especially in kind of regional areas. They're not getting any kind of industry engagement. They're not getting any kind of like resources or tools to kind of spotlight careers in the industry, same as these kind of access to games workshops. So essentially they came together. Declan had a lot of experience working in kind of like maker clubs, so like teaching young people how to use like Arduino boards and like programming and that sort of thing, like using like Raspberry Pis and things like that. So he had a lot of experience working on the ground with young people on creative projects, and Kirsty had a really great understanding, I guess, from the industry side as well. So they basically came together and did kind of a small pilot project that was called Playing Field, which is very, very similar to this kind of access to games workshops that we were running, where they basically worked with young people on free school meals and run a 2-week-long game jam with them alongside different industry mentors and kind of highlighted different sector roles essentially. And it went really well. So basically they did quite a long research project working with both young people and with the games industry to understand exactly what the pillars of Intergames would be and what were the best things to kind of pour our resources and time into to make sure that we'd have the biggest impact possible. So to kind of give you, I guess, like the mission statement or the pillars of Intergames and the kind of formation of it really comes down to basically guidance and information. So that's really our intergames.org website. That's basically a huge kind of careers database. A national volunteer network, which I mentioned briefly before, is around kind of the video game ambassadors platform that we run. Better work experience and robust mentorship. So we're doing a lot of work around that at the moment. We've got some really exciting projects kind of in the pipeline to really create those kind of real tangible industry opportunities. And robust mentorship's the fourth one. So we already run Intergames mentor program that links young people from underrepresented groups with kind of senior industry mentors. So those are the kind of 4 pillars of Intergames. And that's really, I guess, like our mission statement and the things that we really want to kind of pour our time into.
Yeah, that makes sense. I know sort of a big push for you, and you've already mentioned it, was side quests this year. So that was game jams collaborating with studios. It was every fortnight where you partnered with another studio, and it was like a different theme. How has that sort of developed? Reception to that being quite nice to see?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, that's been really great. We started that around April time, I think. And it just got going very, very quickly because it was, I guess, we're in the middle of lockdown. We're really thinking about, or I was thinking about, at least anyway, about like, there's a lot of really great digital tools out there that we could be using. There's a lot of huge industry network out there who have, committed their time to support on kind of social impact projects and actually probably can do that more easily now because there's no kind of expectation to go to a school or go to a college. They can do all these things kind of remotely now. And I think the games industry was in a good place to kind of move towards that as well. So we basically got, I think it was maybe 3 weeks or something like that before we ran the first one. We just designed the whole project and it's been really great. It's been great not only to kind of work with industry more and kind of have a bit more of a closer relationship with different studios, speak to individual members of staff about their roles, kind of work that they do, what their day-to-day is like, get some really kind of practical masterclasses on tips and advice. It's actually turned out to be a really, really great kind of tool for schools and colleges to use as a kind of regular game jam platform, basically. And it has actually informed some of the future projects that we have coming up as well. So side quests will kind of wind down over the next few months, and we're going to have something much more robust in place that should hopefully be a really great way for kind of educational institutions to have regular game jams and work really, really close with the games industry as well. So it's been great, actually. And as much kind of haphazardly as it was put together over lockdown, I think it's been a really, really great resource for us and has helped inform a lot of our future work.
From an outsider looking in, it looks sort of really well organised, and definitely a worthwhile exercise for young people because it gives them sort of practical experience, doesn't it? And to do something to kind of an industry brief.
Exactly. And that really is one of the most valuable things that you can do, as well as real, tangible, practical game making experience. And you'd be surprised at the amount of kind of courses out there that actually take quite a lot of time before they let the students sink their teeth into actual game development projects. And you can ask anyone in industry about what the best way to get into the industry is, or to learn how to do it is to just make games constantly, make games. And we just found that the industry engagement was just that extra little kind of push that people needed to get involved, because they knew that their games were going to be played, judged, and given feedback from real UK games industry.
Yeah, definitely. And I know the sort of background of lockdown, COVID kind of push side quests forward as a good idea to sort of tackle. But how has coronavirus and just the general being of 2020 affected into games? Has it been quite easy to adapt? Have you had to put anything on the back burner that you'd have liked to get to a bit sooner with industry events and things cancelled? Has things going digital helped a bit?
I'll kind of tell you where my head's at with it, and then Millicent can tell you how that's all wrong, and actually we do everything terribly. And but I feel like we were actually kind of like ready for it. We're a remote team anyway, so none of us are in the same place. I'm up in Scotland, Millicent, you're in Bath, Declan's in Brighton, and Rosalie's in Portugal. So,
all right, okay.
Like, we've never met, have we? Like, none of us have met each other apart from Rosalie and Declan, because we've worked together in the past.
Yeah, I've met Declan a couple of times, but yeah, me and Millicent have never met in person, which is very strange. But like, we were kind of ready for it, And I think definitely it has affected some things, but I think for the better, because I think that there was this kind of like predisposition that we had to send industry to educational institutions, that we had to say, okay, you need to go to this college to run this workshop, or you need to go to this school, or we need to go to this industry event. We need to have kind of just like a body there. And in actual fact, I don't think we do need that at all. And more often than not, I think we found that actually the remote engagement is often better, especially with things like the mentorship program that just runs through Slack. It's so easy for anyone in industry who wants to get involved. It can just be sitting there whilst they get on with their day-to-day work, And like this podcast, for example, it's not going to take us any longer than it takes to kind of record it to do it. Whereas if we were to go meet up somewhere, we'd have to get the train there. There's all that kind of other stuff there as well. So I think actually, for me at least, I think that our work is actually in a better place because people have moved in line with us. I think, we were kind of ready for the remote digital stuff, and now people are, I guess, more acclimatized to it. What's your thoughts, Millicent?
Yeah, I think we're maybe like showing them how it's done, really. Because I think a lot of what this year has taught maybe like various studios, companies, not even just in games, but like every kind of workplace, is that there's no reason that people can't work from home half the time. I think that's especially bittersweet for a lot of employees with disabilities in the past who have kind of asked for things like this to be put in place, and they've told that, oh yeah, we can't do that, sorry. But now they're realizing that they can do that.
Yeah.
So hopefully there's going to be a lot of good work going forward in making things more applicable to every employee and being more flexible with the work that they allow them to do from home, because like the entirety of Intergames is run from home and it works. So like there's no reason that other companies can't follow suit, be more accommodating to their employees, I think. There's been no struggles that I've noticed in the work that we do. The podcast recording is fine, the communication's fine. We have our meetings, we have our Slack chat that we can just drop a line in. Like the communication isn't impacted either by being so far away from each other. I guess if it was in like different time zones, we might struggle a bit, but yeah, I think we're doing great.
Now the conversations are starting to happen where going forward, would anybody be interested in going remote? I definitely think it's opened up those conversations. And as you say, Intergames is probably a really good case study for it.
My dad works at Vodafone and he's like a team manager in like kind of the call center vibe, like customer service ends. So they've obviously gone all remote because of lockdown. And what they've said is like any employee who wants to stay full-time remote can. So my dad can just like permanently work from home if he wants, because they've noticed that like the kind of results they're getting and the teamwork and everything that they do, nothing's changed. As long as everyone's got like the proper equipment and space that they need at home, which obviously a lot of people might prefer to go into the office because they don't have like the space at home, or they have like kids and a family or roommates that make working difficult. Like, I think it's just being adaptable to everyone. So my dad's going to work from home permanently now, which means, he can spend more time with his wife and the dog, and it works for him. And I think it's just finding what works for people maybe going forward, that's going to be like a really big part of the workplace environment, is like actually adapting to each person's needs.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we did an article with Yuki for their Raise the Game initiative a month or so ago. We were saying that this remote sort of outlook of people being a bit more open to it is definitely going to help with accessibility, because like you were saying, an office environment isn't suitable to everyone, dependent on their needs. Doesn't mean they're not going to be the best employee you've ever hired.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, as you kind of touched on it before, Millicent, around, like, I think it was Cambridge, students with disabilities that studied there had asked for lectures to become remote because of, well, I guess the inaccessible nature of so many of those kind of historical buildings. And it was always a no, until obviously lockdown happens, and then all the other students are affected, and then they'll do it at the drop of a hat. So yeah, I think it's going to do some really great things for accessibility for sure, especially in the games industry as well. I think, it's going to open up a lot of doors for people.
Definitely. So moving on to something that's a little bit similar. I know you've mentioned that sort of indie games exist to provide more routes and better diversity in the games industry, just sort of highlighting those pathways. But what have you noticed, if anything, about the games industry in the UK, whether it be this year or something that you've sort of realised recently? Is there any sort of trends that you've noticed or concern you at all?
I think obviously I'm very, very new to it, so this could all change in a matter of months. But what I've noticed is it's kind of a small world, especially on Twitter. A lot of games industry professionals, no matter where you work, they seem to, they all know each other because there's so many opportunities to get to know each other via Gamescom, E3, EGX, like these big kind of coming together events for industry. But it seems very welcoming, which I guess I didn't quite expect. You kind of expect these creative industries to be kind of closed off or gatekeepy, or it's not what you know, it's who you know, and that kind of thing. But what I've noticed, and I don't know if that's just because we work in an initiative like this, so people are more open to it, but that those in the higher up positions seem very kind of sincere and open to helping younger people, especially younger, like diverse and underrepresented groups. Yeah, it's just a really welcoming environment is what I've noticed. And they're also keen to help, and they're also keen to make it better. And I suppose that's an asset and a testament to this industry, is that people love it so much that they want it to be better. Yeah. And they're willing to like work towards that. Especially like what I've noticed in like women as well. So the Women in Games initiative was a huge part of why I kind of had the confidence to even pursue games at the start, because I reached out to an ambassador, Geraldine. I forgot her surname, that's really bad. But it's Geraldine, begins with an M. She works on the Call of Duty games on mobile, I think, and she does a lot of the PR marketing. And I reached out to her. I just dropped her an email or a message on LinkedIn, I think. And she was so open to helping me. She spent an hour and a half with me on Zoom and like looked through my CV, looked through my LinkedIn, gave me amazing pointers and practical advice. And then since then, she's dropped me a message on WhatsApp and just like checked in and asked how I'm doing. And she congratulated me on the job. And, she wants to like get a coffee one day. And that kind of just like complete openness and sincerity has been so nice to see.
Yeah, that's really nice. I mean, I've only been in the industry for about just over a year, if that. And now it's coming from other industries, especially like industrial sector, like where I started in, coming into a group of people that are quite uplifting and there to help was strange at first.
Yeah, it's definitely a bit of a culture shock, because I've come over from the kind of film industry, and especially like in freelancing in film, it can be very like competitive, and like, everyone is nice to each other, but you're all still like competing for that byline or competing for that commission. So there's always that kind of vibe. But here it's like, yeah, I'm a senior such and such at this place. Like, I'd love to talk to you about my job so you can also have this job one day. And that it's just so nice. I know I'm going to probably like eat my words eventually and something terrible is going to happen, but it's from what I've seen so far. Touch wood. But from what I've seen so far, it's just a lovely place to be, and I'm really excited about the future.
I'm going to give you the other side of the coin, I think.
Oh, no.
Oh, no. Well,
I knew it was too good to be true.
It balances, doesn't it?
I totally agree with everything that Millicent's saying. I do. And I think as an industry, it's really surprising and I think quite endearing to see at times how close-knit the industry can be and how well everyone seems to know each other. I guess, I think really as well, and it's part of the reason why we do the work that we do, there's a lot of really pervasive issues. I think over the last while, we've seen definitely a commitment from the industry at large to do better around diversity. I think at the same time, the last few months have shown that a lot of that, I think, is a bit of a tick box exercise. And I think there is some really pervasive issues around genuinely wanting greater representation and greater diversity in the industry. And think that there's a lot of work to be done there. It's a very new industry. And I think that with that, it's created a lot of issues around the way that they hire, the way that the industry runs operationally, how studios are managed. That it means that there's a lot of barriers of entry for young people or anyone of an underrepresented group. The UK census gives you some really kind of good stats on that. We're looking at, I think it's 28 or 29% women represented in the industry, which I think is pretty shocking when it's 50% of game players are female as well. And our Black, Asian and minority ethnic representations at 10%. But at the same time, we also have 20% LGBTQI representation, which is hugely overrepresented compared to the rest of the creative sector. So there is still a kind of, I guess, like a atmosphere of kind of nurturing and inclusivity that I think is in the industry, especially given how young it is as well. Like the majority of the industry are like under 35. Yeah, I guess I just felt like I needed to give the other side of the coin there. I think there are a lot of kind of pervasive issues that are coming to light around diversity and inclusivity, especially around women working in the games industry as well. And I think there needs to be a lot of kind of big systemic upheavals and shakeups in some of these larger studios to make sure that kind of some of those barriers of entry are removed. And I think the next year we'll really start to see which studios and which countries at large want to really make a kind of concerned effort to do better, and which ones just see it as more of a tick box exercise. But, you mentioned the diversity kind of raise the game pledge with Yuki. And I think that, that's a good first step for the industry anyway.
I think these past few months, though, especially in maybe like games journalism and within, what we've seen with Ubisoft and things like that, there has been very much a bit of a reckoning, I guess, in the industry. So I'm wondering if now it's like everything's coming to light that we might see some actual positive change. And if not, we'll see what kind of like studios and companies are just using it, like you say, as like a PR exercise or a bit of lip service. Like now we can actually see going forward who's willing to put in the work to make this industry better for everyone in it.
And I think, as you were both saying, the movements in the last few months, last year, are definitely good starting points, but it's not, all right, box tick, done. Yeah, there's definitely a way to go.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think, one of the other kind of pervasive things is that I guess because so many of those who work in the industry do love games, I think there's an expectation that you should feel kind of like eternally grateful for whatever you've been given, and that includes working longer hours, working under management who don't care for you, and I think that's something we need to kind of get away from as well. I think in the creative industries more widely, if you're somebody who is a set designer perhaps, or a costumer or a makeup artist who works in the film industry, you're not necessarily the biggest film fan in the world. You just like doing your job and you love the role that you have. And I think we need to break down the idea that everyone in the games industry has to be a gamer, because that's not necessarily the case at all, especially in art as well. Ash Kerins, for example, at Mediatonic, is an absolutely fantastic concept artist and really great. And I imagine she probably gets quite sick and tired of people asking her what her favorite game is, because she doesn't play them. She's a concept artist and she works in the games industry because it gives her the opportunity to work on a huge diversity of really cool and interesting projects. So I think that's one of the things that we do need to start to break down as well, is that, this is a creative industry. It's, it is an art. It's not just an industry for those who love games. And I don't think that there should be an expectation that people should feel eternally grateful for the role that they've been given and all of that sort of stuff. So I think that's something we need to break down too. And I do think that's something we're trying to do into games as well, by showing the kind of diversity of roles out there and saying, look, you don't have to be like 10th Prestige on Call of Duty to be able to work in the games industry. You just got to be a banging artist,
No, definitely. I think part of the puzzle is, as you were saying earlier, but at the moment the industry is better than it was, definitely, but it's quite close to people that aren't educated to a certain level. So championing people that have transferable skills from even stuff that's tangentially related, for example, like Kotaku UK closed yesterday, but those games journalists that are currently looking for roles could do a really good job in marketing or PR for games. But yeah, it's just championing transferable skills as good as, I've got a degree in game design or something.
Yeah, exactly. And games kind of support services and those outside of the kind of actual core development process. Like there's so much opportunity there, and you don't have to have studied something game specific to be able to do that. But again, I guess kind of touching on that, that's one of the issues as well, is that at the moment, you pretty much got to go to uni to get in. That's not an option for a lot of people, I think. Actually, I think interestingly, what the Chinese room are doing actually with their 6-month internship program is, I think, a really kind of is promising for the future, seeing that they're really taking a proactive step into opening up the kind of pathways into the industry. And basically, they've created a 6-month internship program off of the back of the government's Kickstart scheme. Basically, in this internship program, they've asked for 0 formal qualifications, actively encouraged those with kind of financial and caring responsibilities. They've actively encouraged those with disabilities, those neurodivergence, those with children, parents, those from low-income households. So really trying to just basically open it up and say, it doesn't matter what kind of limitations you have, we'll work around them. We want to actively take steps to kind of make the industry more diverse and more inclusive. And I think something like saying you don't need a piece of paper that you've paid lots of money for to get in is a really good starting point, because as you said, there's so many kind of transcendental and transferable skills in the industry that don't require a degree to be good at.
Definitely. And that's Chinese room are part of Sumo, aren't they? Because I know our director, Ian Goodall's part of the steering committee, which I believe is led by Sumo in some regard, for trying to get a apprenticeship standard for the games industry, allowing students to actually earn while working, so they don't have to go to uni. It's like an alternative option. It's still like in the formative stage. They're definitely sort of at the forefront of trying to make it more diverse and accessible.
Exactly, definitely. And I think that, you guys with like Grads and Games and Cetra Star and that sort of thing go a long way in doing that as well, at least from the university side of kind of actively encouraging diverse applicants and that sort of thing.
Yeah, definitely. And we've, just like yourselves, we've had to diversify a lot for this next academic year, because last year we visited, I think it was 30 plus universities, but obviously that won't be happening this year. So yeah, we're working with a couple of industry partners to provide a alternative sort of digital offering, which I believe they're announced at the end of the month. So I know you've mentioned that SideQuest will sort of wind down and go on to be a completely new offering that's kind of got SideQuest as its foundation. But what does the immediate future hold for Inti Games? Is there anything on the horizon that you're really looking forward to?
From like a social and content standpoint, we're doing a lot more in terms of articles and features. So our mentor program and Inti Games mentees have been amazing, and we've seen some incredible success stories. So we're going to be chatting to a few mentees who have gone on to amazing jobs in industry and hearing from them and writing about that. But also, obviously, the podcast is a really exciting part of Inti Games that we're looking forward to getting out into the world. And we've interviewed some amazing people from all different roles and backgrounds, hearing how they got to where they are, the kind of advice they'd give, and even just like a day in the life. Like a lot of people will hear a job title and think, yeah, I'm interested, but like, what does that actually involve? Like I had no idea, like the differences between PR and marketing as well, like little things like that. So hearing like what an actual kind of a random day in the week involves for like a person in that kind of industry has been really valuable. So I chatted to Anita Wong, who's head of PR at Indigo Pearl, and she gave some amazing kind of eye-opening advice, and just hearing about what her actual job entails and the kind of events she puts on and the people she deals with on a day-to-day basis. Things like that I'm hoping will be really valuable for any young person when they finally get to hear our podcast.
And then I think for Inti Games more widely, like that fits really well into, I think, the future for us is really around, I guess, growing the online database that we have. Like the Inti Games website is essentially like the best resource out there if you want to learn about getting into the games industry and what the roles are out there. Every single role is mapped out with the sorts of things you should be studying in school, the sorts of things that you can start doing to learn more about that role, with interviews from games industry professionals who work in those roles. And I think we're around 70 or 80% of those have been filled by women as well. So really just trying to build a hugely kind of robust and comprehensive database of games industry careers, roles, and information. Really, I guess we want to be the kind of the youth careers service for the games industry for any young person who's interested about a role. I think kind of at the same time as well, I mentioned before that we're kind of wrapping up SideQuest into kind of a more bespoke package, I think. And that's going to be really centered around virtual work experience, which is going to be something that's going to be hugely, hugely important for educators, I think, over the next year, especially those young people in like BTEC colleges, for example. Remote work experience is going to be as close as they're going to get to being in the studio. And I think that's totally fine. But we're going to kind of wrap that up, I think, into a much kind of bigger package in the future and work quite closely with educators. And then I think what we really want to be able to do is like we have all this kind of amazing initiatives now. So we've got the video game ambassadors, which is a great way to get that first point of contact with the industry. We've got the mentorship scheme for anyone who's kind of making those first steps and needs a little bit more one-to-one connection. We've got SideQuest for the time being, which gives people practical game making tools. And then we've got our Intergames website, which is that first kind of like digging into what's out there. And I think what we'd really like to be able to do is to kind of do some really long-term focused work with young people from diverse and underrepresented groups, and basically try to kind of funnel them through those initiatives that we have, work really closely with them, really understand what some of those barriers and limitations are, really understand how best we can support young people through that process, all the way from primary school into their first role in the industry. And I think that's really going to be kind of our focus over the next while, is to work really, really closely with young people and get some real tangible, real world opportunities and jobs in the industry for them.
That's quite exciting. You two are going to be incredibly busy, especially with university as well, Millicent.
Oh God, yeah. Wish me luck.
But no, as you were saying, the Intergames website I think is a really strong offering. It's really well put together, and like Millicent was saying, just down to the full list of job titles that there is available, and just breaking down to what that actually involves. Because I mean, hearing job titles are well and good, but what does that day to day generally look like?
A job description doesn't do your job justice, and yeah, it helps sometimes to just have that little bit of industry engagement, a little bit of a touch point with someone who's in that role who can just spotlight it a little bit for you. And I think that's, we've said this before, but I think that's really great about what Millicent's been doing with the Twitter Q&As. Is like, you'd be surprised about how valuable it is to just have your questions answered by someone who works in that role.
Definitely. Probably getting close to the end, so just wrapping up. Is there anything you'd like to talk about that I've missed?
I think we've kind of covered a lot of ground. Brandon, what do you think?
Yeah, I think we've covered a lot of ground there for sure. Yeah.
Where is the best place that people can find you as Intergames, and individually if you want to promote your own handles?
Well, definitely follow at Intergames HQ on Twitter, so you can see everything we're up to. You can get involved with the Twitter Q&As. You can find out about when the podcast is available to listen to and all that fun stuff. And if you do want to follow me, I'm at Millicent Games.
From my side, if you're working in the games industry and you're listening to this and you're really passionate about improving diversity and inclusion, spotlighting roles for young people underrepresented in games, get in touch with me at brandon@intergames.org. We'd love to have you as a games industry mentor. We'd love to get you signed up to the Video Game Ambassadors so that you can work closely with disadvantaged young people all around the country who are desperate to learn more about this awesome industry. So get over to intergames.org as well. Check out everything we've got there. If you're a young person, get in touch with me as well, brandon@intergames.org. There's lots of support that we can offer you to help you learn more about the industry. And yeah, if you want to follow me on Twitter, it's at BandCole, BANDDCOLE.
I should drop in my work email as well. If anyone does want to get involved and help out with a Twitter Q&A or answer any questions, or even come on our podcast, if you work in the industry and think you have something valuable to say about your role or want to share with any young people, my email is also at Millicent. It's not at Millicent. It's Millicent at intergames.org.
Thank you for that, and thank you for doing the podcast.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for listening to the Aardvark Swift podcast. This episode was recorded, hosted, produced, and edited by me, James Bowers. If you have any comments or suggestions for the podcast, or if you'd like to feature on a future episode, please email james.b@aswift.com. Special thanks go out to Brandon, Cole, and Millicent Thomas for spending time with us. If you're looking to break into video games or make a transition to a new role, be sure to check out the Aardvark Swift website at aswift.com, where we have hundreds of industry vacancies at studios both at home and abroad. Be sure to follow us across social media for the latest news and roles. You can find us on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook under our handle at Aardvark Swift. We also have a behind-the-scenes Instagram account where you can see what we get up to and what it's like to work here at Life at Aardvark. The music in this episode is from Incompetech by Kevin MacLeod. To learn more, you can visit incompetech.com.